So our keynote speaker all morning is Dr. Tony Beliz. Dr. Beliz is a licensed clinical and forensic psychologist with over 30 years experience assessing men and women seeking to enter religious life, evaluating and treating ordained men and women with life crises and other problems. Dr. Beliz has consulted with religious organizations of all denominations across the country on mental health and risk management issues related to addiction, boundary problems, risk factors, and predatory behavior. I learned this morning, too, that he also teaches at the Saul Price School of Public Policy at USC, and though I got my PhD from UCLA, I will focus very well this morning on what you have to say. So, Dr. Beliz.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. And thanks for coming, and thanks for the invitation. What I've done all my life, I guess, is profile people and profile events, and to that end, I've gotten to had the fortune of being involved in a number of things that bad events that might happen. But the thing that's most important is prevention works, and I think we're all in this business of catching things before they happen. So it's good you're here. I think that mental health and clergy have two things in common. We're here to help people. We have that desire. And if we're not careful, we can burn out. Because what we see are people with tremendous demands, tremendous headaches, tremendous difficulties. And if you're not well trained and not good at it, you burn out, right? People have asked me, I've seen people on death row, seen all sorts of problem people. And they say, well, how do you do it? How do you not get burned out? And my point is, well, yeah, you hear all these bad stories, but you help people get better. That's the thing. But if you're not good at it, you burn out, because then you have one failed thing after another. So I would encourage you to continue to grow. I'm an old guy right now, and I still go to workshops, and I keep fine-tuning my skills, because the day you stop doing that, you're starting to head downhill, right? There's always something that you can learn from somebody. And so today we're going to talk about pornography. And what's relevant of what I do to this is that, to today's thing, is that back in the 80s, I was asked to do assessments of men and women interested in entering religious life. And that then morphed into seeing religious who are in crises, all sorts of crises, personal crises, parish crises, and all the addictions that one can imagine. And that's what I still do. It was a lot with the Catholic Church, but also with lay organizations and religious organizations. And are we good? All right. So, you, like me, will have people that are sort of reluctant to open up. And what I typically tell people is, I've heard everything. There really isn't anything you can surprise me with. And sure enough, they surprise me. But the point is, right, that you offer yourself in the service of others. And so we're going to talk about that today relative to the issue of pornography, because way back when I started, that really wasn't as much of an issue, right? So we'll talk about that. Oh, there you go. Okay, so the outline. We're going to talk about devils and demons, healthcare strategies, the history of pornography, current manifestations, the addiction process, getting help, and also staying healthy. Because if you don't take care of yourselves, you're not going to be much good to anybody else, right? And sometimes you're the first person that sees somebody in crises, and if you're not sort of well put together, you don't give people that sense of confidence, So, pornography. Definition: the printed or visual material containing the explicit description of sexual organs or activity intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic emotional feelings. Right, so fairly broad. So we're going to talk about a couple of things first. We all have personalities. We're all built some sort of way. This is one way to take a look at it. The first is that we have our public life. And that's pretty easy to spot. I don't even have to ask you. I can just look at the sign-in sheet and know what you do, who you are, and where you live, and all of that. So that's not too difficult. Then we all have our private life, which a little harder to find, but not a big deal. Because I can ask one of your friends, What does he like to do? What does she like to do? How does she spend her free time, or he spend her free time? And then part of what I think we're in the business, or I'm in the business of, but also for you, is secret life, or a double life. And usually in crowds like this, someone in the audience has a double life, secret life. So I'm not asking you to raise your hands, but but to use this as a way of beginning to take care of yourself. So this is designed not only for the people that we serve, but also for you as individuals. Because one of the things that I realized very early on is that whether you're a doctor, or whether you're a pastor, or reverend, or whatever the heck, first you're a human being. And you're subject to the same things. And you have to understand that. I had one priest who was in trouble who said, but I can't let my community down. I've got to be perfect. I can't be angry. I can't be. Well, that's not the way life works, right? So, important to take a look at this. And as again, do your self-reflection, right? Are there things that you would rather keep secret that maybe you should deal with, right? Give you an example, I think. Jerry Sandusky, right? These are people that have lived double lives. Wow, how does this happen? I'm not even touching. 2012, Penn State college football coach. Most of you remember him. Big time guy. Ran a charity for minors. Child molester, serial rapist. Here he is in other times in his life. But the point is, no one really knew that this individual was doing this. No one knew. And he victimized a lot of people. Victimized a lot of kids, right? Dennis Hastert. Yeah, the 51st Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, right? One of the highest ranking politicians in U.S. history. Here he is in other times in his life. 2015, sexually abused 5 adolescent males. And from 65 to 81 was a teacher wrestling coach. Put himself in a position where he was close to kids, just like Sandusky, just like priests, just like clergy, just like psychologists, teachers, right? Find a way to get close to your victim pool. And his pseudonym was, on the computers was Dick Dangler. And when they raided his, let's keep going. It's confusing. Next one. This individual, who was Brigadier General Brian T. Roberts, big time guy. Everybody looked up to this guy. He was a commanding officer, next, of Fort Jackson, South Carolina, 2012. He had a zero tolerance for sexual harassment and assault. He was like the guy, right? No nonsense at the fort while I'm here. I'm in charge, I'm gonna set the tone. But, double life, 3 mistresses, had a physical altercation with a couple of people, ultimately terminated. Right, and so you wonder, how are these incredibly talented people going sideways? And the point for all of you is, that can happen to us. You gotta keep yourselves in check. Again, Army General Petraeus, he was director of the CIA in 2011. Shared classified info with his mistress and was forced to resign, right? So how does a guy like this get in trouble? West Point graduate. He was an elite group of students at West Point. Was selected to a thing that only accepted 10 people out of over 1,000. Brilliant guy, real good strategist, real good technician. Ends up having problems. Go ahead. And basically, these are the people that I see. I mean, I see these people all the time. That's what I do in my practice, right? Maciel, next. Reverend Marcial, founder of the Legionaries of Christ. He was with them from 1941 to 2005. Next. The greatest fundraiser of the modern Roman Catholic Church. Dynamic guy. He had vision, disciplined leadership, passion. But he had a double life, right? He had a monkey on his back. Go ahead. Here he is with the Pope. And this is his jacket in the end. Sexually abused many minors. 9 came forward, 8 were found legitimate. And usually when 8 come forward, there's usually 16, 24, and 50. There was a study on, I do pedophile assessments for the court. And so there was a study of about 63 individuals charged with molesting a minor. And the average admission was 1.1 cases, right? The one they got caught for and maybe another one. So that was the average. Then they went back and saw these guys again after everything had been adjudicated. The average was about 50, right? And so that's what happens. 3 different women, 6 children with 3 different women, sexually abused many people. And he was forced to retire in 2006. And again, the whole thing is, this is where you guys are important. It messes up everybody's faith. How can I trust you, right? How can you trust people? So it's important to not only understand yourself, but understand other people that are working for you. Watch what they do. That's what I do for a living. I watch people. It's behaviors, right? Go ahead. Another guy, here's a guy, Jerry Falwell, fundamentalist Baptist minister, and again, Mr. Righteousness, right? Always on top of everything. He knew everything and people looked up to him. Go ahead. Here he is from the pulpit. Go ahead. They raided his home in 2005. He was Dick Dangling. That was his pseudonym on the internet. He had homemade porn, bestiality, underage boys. They found heroin, PCP, and GBH, which is like ecstasy, right? And again, who knew? Right? Who knew? And so part of it is you need to take responsibility for yourself. If you've got a little kink in your armor, work on it. Because the point is, it does get better. But the first thing you got to do is you got to talk about it. If you don't, my goodness. Go ahead. And when they asked him what happened, he said, the devil put that filth in my house. The devil made me do it is not going to work in court. I'm telling you that right now. All right? And I've had a couple of people, that's what they've said, like, my goodness, the level of insight. No wonder they got in trouble, right? Go ahead. And then this guy, in terms of a double life, they thought he was a high school student playing basketball. He's 29 years old. And so people want to believe what they want to believe, right? And so how can he be a bad guy? He's my pastor. He's my minister. She's my minister. She's not bad, right? So people put a lot of faith in what we do, and the idea is not to abuse people. And what we find of people that abuse people is they're very needy. They're very needy. And so, yeah, I'm helping you, but you're helping me feel good. And I want more. I want more. I had a religious who would, find out in the parish who was divorcing, who was a single parent, and then get involved with them, tuck the kids in at night, and then get involved with the mother, and then after the event say, you made me sin. Look what you did to me. It's like nasty, right? But it happens. It happens, right? Go ahead. So now we're going to talk about devils and demons. There's 2 things you got to watch for, all of us. One are the devils. This is like, the apple on the tree. Affects all of us, right? And what are they? Drugs, alcohol, money, gambling. So for example, all of you look pretty normal today, right? But let's say I said, well, look, let's have, a little shot of tequila right now. We'd probably all deal with it. But what if I said, well, let's have 10 in 1 hour and make sure your blood really got saturated? A lot of you would be real different. I'd be the first one to go sideways, right? And so the point is, there are certain temptations in life that we're all subject to, all of us. And those are the obvious ones. You drink too much, you gamble too much, you get into pornography, right? Those are exterior things that you got to watch for. Because when you start gravitating that way, here's the problem. There's nothing innately evil or wrong about you. You're just out of balance. Something in your life is triggering these behaviors, right? And that's when don't get caught up with shame and guilt, because that's part of the process. Think about, okay, something's on in my life. I got to start looking at it because it's preventable, right? Demons refer to inner things in your life. The monkey on your back. I had one very, very successful individual who got in big trouble, And even though he was really well-liked, real popular, real charismatic, the monkey on his back was his parents saying, "You're not good enough. You don't deserve this. People are laughing at you." Right? And that triggers you, right? And some people overperform, some people underperform. But so there are things like that. And so I invite all of you to think about, well, what are your demons? You know, we all have a little kink in our armor. Well, what is it? And is that interfering with what you do in your daily life? So devils and demons. Next. The first one is physician, heal thyself. Before we help other people, you got to be squared away to some extent. You can't be perfect, you're not going to be perfect, but do you have your issues under wrap well enough so that you can put them aside and help other people? Because if they get mixed up, it's a problem. So again, we talked about the universal hazards. Those are external things that can get all of us into trouble. You know, and so how much is enough drinking? How much can you drink? Well, it's your physiology usually, but moderation's okay. One tequila today is not going to take us off. You know, it's when you do something to excess that's a problem, right? And then you've got the intrapersonal hazards, the internal things. All of us have something. All of us have something, you know. And I'm sure some of you are perfect. Great for you, right? But we all have a couple of kinks, you know. And so I'll tell you my stuff. I know from very early on that I have an addictive personality. I know that. So I got to watch myself. But you know what my addiction is, thank God? I like to play mahjong on the internet. You know, hey, I get lost in that. But I know that when I start doing that, I'm out of balance. I'm out of balance, you know. And what is it? I'm either upset about something, but more often than not, it's because I haven't written a report. All I do is I write reports. I see people write reports. And rather than do that, I start doing this thing, right? So you got to know what it is for you. Right? You got to know what it is for you. I had someone who was a very, very good commander of a big thing and very well liked, very good. He could solve any life and death issue. But at the end of the day, he thought he was useless, inadequate. Right? And so he'd go home and to unwind, have that little shot of whiskey. Fast forward 20 years later, he can't stop. You know, liver's the size of a football, all sorts of things. So the first thing is, before we get into pornography or whatever it is, how well do you know yourselves and are you taking care of yourselves? Because that's the prevention. You take care of yourselves, you're going to have a long career. I've seen many doctors and priests and nuns, and they're ready to go. And I can just see the car go off the cliff. Right? So take care of yourselves. So let's talk a little bit about the history of pornography. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about pornography. My presentations usually have pictures and slides, not today. You know what I mean? I can do that today. For obvious reasons. But we're going to talk about this with your minds open, okay? If you're someone that adamantly hates pornography, that's okay. But learn the other side. Because there's two sides to every tortilla. And you need to know the other side so that you're not vulnerable. Right? So you're not vulnerable. If you're pro-life, for example, take the time to learn everything about the pro-choice. Don't be ignorant, don't be arrogant. People don't lead when they're like that. You got to know the other side. You got to face that. Right? If you're against gay marriage, read the other side. Learn. Be balanced. You know, then you're better able to help people. Because see, if I'm pro-choice and you're clearly pro-life, how am I going to get help from you? It's not going to happen, right? So people suffer in silence. Well, I'm not going to her because I know what she's like. We'll get that lecture. So remember that. So we're going to go through this, talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, the whole thing. I'm not taking a stand here. I'm just sharing this. I'm not delivering a message one way or the other. You know, there were Stone Age carvings on pornography. This isn't a new thing, right? It has evolved throughout the ages. It was more popular with the 20th century with technology, a little more, accessible. Then the sexual revolution came along, right? And sex was good. Free love. Do the right thing. Love somebody, right? And then the internet social media era. Used to be where a guy like me trying to get get pornography, not that I was, but trying to get pornography at age 12, 13, you couldn't do it. You had to go to the liquor store. It was a magazine. And who's going to do it? And where are you going to hide? I mean, it's just difficult. Now, you don't have to do too much. I'll tell you now, so in case I forget, a story of a boy that got addicted to pornography. At the age of 11, he's in baseball, and so he wants to get something, and so he wants to look at it in the internet. And so his sporting good place was called Dick's Sporting Good. As soon as he put in Dick, 100 pictures came up of pornography sites. It's just that simple, right? So the internet and social media has created a new addiction, right? It has created an opportunity for people very easily, without having to do too much, to watch all of this stuff and to get lost in it, right? So I do a lot of violence, threat and risk assessment, and so do a lot of things on countering violent extremism. I'm in those sites all the time, to where every now and then my computer gets locked, right? And so I have to tell the people that monitor these things, hey, look, it's me, I'm okay, right? But there isn't that with pornography. It's wide open, right? You put a lock on your kid's computer, he'll get another one, or he'll go to his buddy's house. So I tell you, for intervention, if you got a kid addicted, either at home or in your parishioners, first thing you got to do, take that computer out of the bedroom. Don't put it there. You know, I saw my friends put a computer and a TV in their kids' bedrooms. And I had 4 kids. I didn't want any. I ended up with 4. Color me happy. But I had the means to put that in each one of my kids' bedrooms. And I didn't for 2 reasons. One, I was cheap. The more important reason was I didn't want them to isolate. Because I would see what my friends would do. You know, we'd be visiting and their kid would come hi and then go into the bedroom with their buddies and lock the door. Right? You don't want people to isolate. And that's where double lives happen. Get a little time for yourself. Right? And I tell people, you know, what are kids going to go for? A lot of it's pornography for a number of reasons. But that's not unusual. The trouble is, how accessible do you make it? How easy do you make it? And when they're doing that, it also implies that they've got nothing else to do. Right? I had a mother who was telling me, he doesn't do any of that. You know, small place, small 1 bedroom, and, you know, he doesn't do any of that. And I'm a light sleeper. There's no way. So he tells me later, you know, when she's out, she didn't wake up. So between midnight and 3, I'm on the computer doing stuff. And he was having problems at school because he's not sleeping, right? So if any of you think that you're light sleepers and you hear everything, you're fooling yourselves. Once you get into REM state, REM sleep, you're not going to hear anything. So don't think like that, right? Don't enable. But the main thing is keep it out of the bedrooms. We've seen that intervention work very, very well. And if you don't put it in the bedroom, then it doesn't become an issue later, right? It really doesn't become an issue. So here are the pros of pornography. It's a healthy way to explore sexuality. No STDs, no sexually transmitted diseases. Can't get anything, right? Can't touch, safe. You're not going to get busted. You're not going to be in a hotel, right? The sites now are free, so you're not even spending any money. Sex therapy uses pornography to teach people how to have a fulfilling sexual experience. It promotes intimacy. You get close, you learn how to do that, you learn what the other person looks like physically, right? You understand that process? Go ahead. It's a harmless way of meeting human sexual desires. I'm not cruising, I'm not looking for prostitutes, right? What's wrong with that? It's victimless. In the 18th century, 1 out of 8 women worked part or full-time as prostitutes. You know, these are your moms, your sisters, your aunts. Controversies. Is it really the root of all evil? Right? And it's not that simple. Someone could say alcohol is the root of all evil, or drugs. It's a combination of things. Right? Does it improve or harm marriages? Some people believe it improves it. Others show that it harms marriages. All of this stuff falls in the it depends. You got to know the other side. You got to know what's going on. Does it educate or does it desensitize minors? For some families that can't talk about sex with their kids, this is how they learn. Right? So is it a good thing? Or does it teach them to devalue women and give false expectations? This is the way it's got to be. If you look at any hardcore porn, my goodness, you know, the ability to engage in, you know, 3 hours of lust is remarkable. Whereas for most people, it's, you know, 2 minutes. Right? So it promotes human sexuality, or does it promote exploitation? Right? So again, two sides to every tortilla. It's not so much what you think. I don't care what you think. It's what your parishioner thinks. You got to start with them. I've got my own views, but I can't put that on someone who has another view. You got to start there. You have to open the door. Let them talk about it. And, you know, is it feminism or is it victimization? Right? Go ahead. Porn data in the US. 60 million people annually purposely visit porn sites. It's a whole lot of people. 63.4 million unique visitors to adult websites viewed over 15 billion pages of adult content in 2005. That's gone up. So you see the number of people, which suggested, yeah, in this group, probably a couple of you. 8.5% of porn viewers become addicted. The estimates are higher now, but it's about 5.1 million people are addicted to pornography, like alcohol, like other stuff. It's addicting. Why? Because it's like Valium. You get that immediate rush. You get that immediate rush. And it can be PRN like Valium, as needed. I feel a little low, boom, there you go. Back into 35% of all downloads are related to pornography. So 1 out of 3 downloads are, you know, we had a guy at the county, amazing, addicted to pornography. So he gets, you know, disciplined, has to take a year off, treatment, the whole thing. I mean, he's on, you know, the day back, he goes back and opens a website on the county thing. Right? Just couldn't stop himself. And I was thinking, my goodness, you know you're under the gun. You could have done this at home. You had to come to work and do it. Right? That's a very, very powerful addiction. Like the person has to take that drink to get out of the, you know, get going in the morning. Right? 2.5 billion emails sent or received every day contain pornography. Happens in churches, work sites, schools, libraries. People go to the local library, look things up in libraries where they haven't stopped it. And you can find it in you know, some places will have a hard lock on obvious pornography sites. You go around the thing. You look at Sports Illustrated. Eventually they'll have that swimsuit thing. Then it's got links to other places. And before you know it, you're home free. Right? And the kids know that better than you guys. And so it's a big deal. This whole point is it's a big deal. It's not unique to someone you might see, and it's not unique to you. Right? Porn data. This is what happens with pornography. It releases natural chemicals that make you feel good. Dopamine, norepinephrine, testosterone, serotonin, oxytocin. These are all addicting agents, physiologically. And their studies show that pornography releases these things. So you feel good. Right? You feel good. Which is why you can't just tell someone, well, just don't do it. I mean, you got to be a little more creative than that, a little more helpful. There's easy accessibility and availability. 24 hours, 7 days a week. We could turn one on right now and start watching it. Right? You can do it when the kids do it when the parents are at work. Right? Anonymous. We have kids that have a separate email so that no one knows, or they think they don't know. And I'll tell you right now, you know, since I do a lot of risk assessment, a lot of profiling, if you have that separate phantom account, it's just a matter of time before someone finds it. We find that all the time. We know now that Lisa, for example, has her account. We also know she may have another account, and there's a way to find that out. Right? So clean your stuff up. It's also free. Go ahead. It's private. It's only you. Only you know. No one knows. I don't know. Right? And so it's a very private thing that is addicting. It's like me and my mahjong. No one knows. I just told you guys. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. Right? Issues. This is from Finlayson and Fief. It's not reality-based. It objectifies women, distorts sexuality, erodes relationships, destroys trust, undermines self-esteem. Because see, once you develop a double life and you're getting your needs met this way, you don't feel good about yourself. Right? No one here can say, yeah, I'm a subscriber. I'm a big-time porn person. You don't do that. Shame and guilt. You start hiding. Once you start hiding, you can't get close to people. The married guy dating a woman, he can't go too far in that relationship because he's got that big secret. So everything's superficial, right? The guy that has to load up every afternoon for heroin, he can't get too close to you because he's got that secret. And once you have a secret, you have to keep everything apart. That makes sense? And it creates a double life. You know, and so that's the problem. You know, you have people suffering in silence. You know, they're talking to you about their marriage problems or their financial problems. Well, it could be something else too. Just have an open mind. Create an environment where they can ultimately, hopefully, talk to you about it. But the other thing is, do something like this in your communities so people have an open avenue. Right? Say, thank God, you know, this, so my pastor does know about this stuff. Maybe I can come forward. Right? Negatives. It increased marital infidelity by 300% in one study. So it is a problem. Go ahead. The most common role, young women portraying teenagers. That's interesting. You know, the cheerleader. You know, backseat Betsy. Things like that. And so it suggests you got to do some prevention on that side, right? The whole, thank you, someone laughed on that. You know, it's okay to, you know, but it's important to understand that it provides intervention. If you realize that a lot of men have these issues or others, well, provide some intervention there. Make sure your kids are safe in your communities, right? We, you know, done a lot of trauma event management throughout the world, went to Chile, Australia, Japan, and you know, the thing about mass sheltering and sometimes one of the concerns when you have a big event like New Orleans, we went there to Katrina, is that you have these mass shelters, 5,000 people, 3,000 people, and the computers are down, and law enforcement is always concerned about the registered sex offenders that are in these groups, right? And what are we gonna do, you know, Chester the molester's in here and we don't know where he is, right? Well, that's true, but the other thing is probably going to be Uncle Johnny. You know what I mean? It's probably going to be somebody else. So the point is vigilance, right? And taking care of people. Child pornography is the fastest growing online business. Most of you know the FBI has a big thing on human slavery and human trafficking. And in some parts of Southeast Asia where they're very poor, there's no hope, some of the families sell their kids for $2. Because that $2 is a lot. Because see, that's $2 for them, but also more importantly, over time, that's one less mouth to feed. Right? $624,000 child porn traders online in the US. A couple of years ago now, there was a thing in a local paper about in the world of predators, an event, a weekend from LA to Ensenada, Baja California. And these were all pedophiles. And it was advertised on their website. We're gonna go, whatever you want. Little boy, little girl, whatever you want. People signed up. Right? The only trouble is an FBI sting. And they're openly talking about, yeah, you know, I hardly. Some were married, You know, they weren't the cross-eyed, unusual person. They were people that looked pretty much like you guys, right? And so they got arrested as soon as they left the harbor, and as soon as they all said something that was pretty outrageous about what their plans were, you know. In some countries, as most of you know, I'm concerned when I do a evaluation on a pedophile, what their travel is. I look to see where they've gone. Certain countries are just prone for this, where it's okay. You can buy a kid, you can buy a little girl. Where do people go for fun? 55% of homeless teen girls exposed to prostitution. This whole business of the foster kids, foster system. They graduate to what? To what? Right? It's sad. I mean, you talk about prevention. If you have foster kids, they're at risk. Right? Because, I know I wouldn't have made it at 18. I'm barely making it now, right, with my mahjong addiction. So, you can imagine a kid at 18 years old in today's environment. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? They have to survive. There's also a relationship of porn and violent behavior, right? If you look at Fight the New Drug organization, they got the data there. But for example, these were 4 notorious people. Who are they? Who are they? Ted Bundy, Edmund Kempfer, Stuart Hazel, Jeffrey Dahmer. They love pornography. We're also seeing that in the profile of other people that I won't talk about today. That's one of the secondary profiles, right? But these people ended up watching pornography a lot, gave them ideas, and for all the wrong things. They were isolated, right? They found out, in pornography you can see bestiality. A man or a woman having sex with an animal, right? And it gets worse and worse and worse. And for some people, it makes them want to see it in real life. For some people, they misread pleasure and pain, right? It's on TV, it must be a good thing, right? And I think she really likes it, or I think he really likes it, right? And I won't tell you, but lots of stuff people do that are incredible. So there is a relationship to this with a small percentage of people, so it's not like everybody goes this way. Go ahead. And again, an important part, 99.9% of the people watching porn are considered a part of the normal population, like you guys. It's not just that it's just these weird people that are doing this. No, we're exposed to that, right? So it's not I'm holier than thou, it's like it's out there. There's a couple of studies, 2006 to 10, and then 2008 to 12, and these studies, go ahead. It doubled the divorce for men, went from 6% to 11%. Tripled the divorce for women, because women watch pornography too. Economics, child porn is $3 billion industry per year. And so what happens is, you get an adult porn site, a little bit to the right, you see all the kiddie stuff. And it's very seductive, but you got the adult porn, and then you watch some of the ladies, or some of the men, get younger and younger. So it gives you permission, right? Global porn, $97 billion per year, $12 billion in the US. It's money, right? People are making money out of this. Pornography and websites. Right now, 24,644, 172,000 sites. And then, go home if you want, just hit pornography. You'll get all sorts, you'll see what I'm talking about. But just be careful, don't get lost in it, right? Estimated $3,000 per second spent on porn. There's like 28,000 per second hits for pornography. That's how prevalent it is, right? And not everyone becomes addicted, but if you provide for your parishioners an opportunity to have discussions about this, an opportunity to talk about it so that they don't get stuck and they don't get into shame and guilt and begin to isolate, then it's helpful. I came up with this term back in 2008, isonection, and this is what we see, this is what I see with men and women that get in trouble who are members of the clergy and other people. But isonection is a combination of isolation and connection. And it's the management of emotional, psychological, and social isolation through social media, right? You go in there. You don't talk to people anymore. You go in there and you soothe yourself. But I'll tell you, if you look at the sites, the pornography sites, 100-fold compared to the self-help sites. No one's going in there for prayer, right? No one's going in there for how to get a good haircut. 40 million Americans are regular customers. And so a lot of people don't think they're addicted, but this is their go-to. A little stressed, I'll spend 5 minutes. It's harmless, no one knows about it. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm still functioning. Got my wife, my kids. I'm a good minister. So that's not a big deal. 1 out of 3 viewers are female. It's not a male thing anymore. Right? So your female parishioners can be struggling with the same thing. Don't assume that it's just a male-oriented situation. Go ahead. 25% of all search engine requests are porn-related. 1 out of 4. It's just amazing, right? It's a real prevalent thing. So the question is, what prevention programs do you have at your places? What can you do to help people not go into that sinkhole? Age of first exposure, several studies, age of 11, right? And so again, at the age of 11, you're totally curious. Right? At the age of 11, what could I find? Popeye. Father knows best. Leave it to Beaver. They didn't even have a computer. They didn't exist. You were limited. Nowadays, it's wide open to everybody. Right? And you can find these sites, you can just fall into them. Go ahead. Students. This is a throughout the world problem. India, a study of 400 students, 70% of boys started at age 10. 93% felt that it was as addictive as drugs. So what are you going to do if you're smart? Drugs or pornography? Pornography. Drugs wears you out, gets you in trouble. People see it. No one sees the pornography. Right? The United Kingdom, 10% of 12 and 13-year-olds addicted to pornography. It's a big thing. DSM, whatever it's going to be after 5, is going to probably come up with an internet addiction disorder. Right? Because it's so prevalent. It just takes over your life. I don't have the slide in here, but you can see brain changes from excessive viewing of video stuff. Go ahead. South Africa, 4,400 men, 67% view pornography. It's a go-to, right? Go ahead. In a study of 2,500 students, 60% view it for education, and 75% said that it created unrealistic expectations. So when they finally do have sex, they're disappointed, right? So they have sex for the first time in marriage, and wow, it wasn't like what I saw on the TV. Must be either something wrong with me or her, right? So it's a problem. It's not the best sex education. So what do you do in your parishes to help this? Because see, there's 4 major appetites in the human body. Sleep, activity, energy, and sex, your libido. Right? You got to address that. And for all sorts of reasons, people are very uncomfortable with that. Right? And some parishioners will say, oh God, I can't believe he's talking about this. I don't want to come to this place. She's a pervert. He's a pervert. Why is he talking about this stuff? Denial is not going to help anybody. So again, it's not as easy as just stopping. It's not going to be a lecture. It's not going to be. It's a series of interventions, and the first thing is to get people to talk, to create an environment in your communities or on the one-on-one where people can talk about things. Right? I end up going to death row. Most of the time, I see people don't want to talk to me. They talk because I create an environment where they can talk. Part of this training, supervision, and your own inherent ability. Right? And some people, the minute you see them, they don't want to talk to you. You just shut them off. So be careful with that. 58% believe that it's wrong. So a lot of people see it and have a sense that it's wrong. Child porn, 116,000 searches per day for child pornography. It's real big. Okay, and so is it happening in your communities? Probably. The data would suggest that. Just like the data about double lives suggests there are a couple of you here that have a couple of secrets. It's tough to live with that. You know, I'm not suggesting you bring it up to me today or to the group, but find somebody to talk to about it. The first thing is talking to somebody. Porn sites, 30 to 35% of all data transferred across the internet. A third of the stuff is on porn. 70% men, 30% women. Average time spent viewing, 12 minutes. Harmless. I got my work done. I got my homework done. Who knew? I've got my alias on the computer. 2 out of 3 employees. Happens on your workforce. And I will talk about a place where, oh geez, this particular group, particular community, the pastor decided to give everybody a computer, and they didn't have it. He decided to give everybody in his administration internet access. And he told them all, look, I'm going to be watching this stuff. And so remember, let's use it appropriately. Let's stay away from stuff that's going to get us in trouble. Well, okay. He calls me 2 months later and he says, Dr. Beliz, you wouldn't believe what happened. I went away for a month. When I came back and I looked, he told them, and I have an application so that I will know which computer is accessing pornographic sites. So he calls me a couple of months later and says, Dr. Beliz, you wouldn't believe what happened. I went out for a month. I came back. I turned on that application. It lit up like a Christmas tree. Right? And so again, you know that even at the work site, it's possible. And then you see the scandals. Right? You see what happens. It's not good for anybody. Unique monthly visitors, Netflix 46 million people per month, Amazon 110 million new people per month. These aren't repeats. Twitter 160 million. Pornography 450 million monthly visitors. It's incredible. It's incredible. And so again, the data suggests that if not you, somebody. We can't all say, no, it's not me. It's a whole lot of people, right? YouTube, 800 million. These are when people don't see it. It's amazing. Valentine's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day weekend, Hurricane Sandy, for some reason. It doesn't suggest that the whole state of New York was. New Year's Day, July 4th, Christmas Eve and Christmas, Easter and Thanksgiving. So what does that suggest? These are times of connectedness. People are together. People are preoccupied. These are, right? And so it suggests that those that don't have anything to do on these days might be at risk. So what do you do as a leader in your community? Have some stuff those days. Open it up. I talked to a high-ranking clergy person who has no family. And so I asked him, well, how do you deal with it? Right? He said, I have to work at it because I'm alone. I have to work at it. And so I'm planning. I want to make sure I'm never alone. I plan for Thanksgiving. I hope someone invites me. If not, I take, and so he was busy on days when not much happening at the church. Because what happens in some places? You do that mass, you do that great lecture, you feel one with God, you feel everybody's with God. Then they all go home and what are you doing? Right? What are you doing for the rest of the day? It's important. Porn and the faithful. So, if you cite the Journal of Sexual Addiction, Pastoral Counseling, lots of sites that have current data and research. 68% of church-going men. So these aren't people that have fallen away from church. These are people in your parishes, right? 76% of ages 18 to 24 Christian young adults. So these are young adults that actually go to church. They don't just go for the big holidays, they're actually there. 49% say all or most of their friends seek out pornographic material. Because it's easier to say, I don't do it, but man, my pal, holy Toledo. Criminy, right? 62% of teens have received nude images. That used to not happen because we didn't have those means, but now people text sexual images to one another. And that innocent girl thinks she's doing it to her boyfriend, the love of her life. He thinks this is great. He sends it to everybody else. It's So how do you educate your students? 40% have sent nude images. And it's, these are creative ideas that are good until it isn't, right? And so a simple thing like educating teenagers about this stuff and the consequences is incredibly powerful. And that's going to yield more results for you than a prayer, unfortunately. And all I'm suggesting is this. It's not all about prayer. I've had many men come to me and women and say, yeah, I'm praying to God. Okay, but meanwhile, your whole life's falling apart. So keep praying, but let's work on this stuff. What's a good barometer of health? You gotta have three things: physical, spiritual, and psychological. A guy who's heavy on spiritual, prays a lot, the whole thing, knows the Bible, eats birds, and has no psychological mindedness, he's gonna fail. Simple. And vice versa, right? A person that's heavy on psych, Mr. Freud or Dr. Freud, who's a pastor, who's low on spirituality, he's not gonna be that effective. And the men and women that I see that fail routinely, the worst are down on all three. And mostly it's two though, where they're just not. A lot of men that get in trouble have stopped praying. They've stopped doing their part. The rehab program, St. Elizabeth's and some of these other places where they treat individuals with addiction, religious men and women, it's the same three things. First thing they do is they get them to do something physical: walk, talk, exercise. The other is get back to prayer. Where's your spiritual direction? And the other thing is know yourself. So I used to send people, recommend that they go. They'd come back 6 months later. Incredibly different. Physically, psychologically, spiritually. And they'd say, man, I couldn't believe it was just that simple. 3 months later, back to the same grind. Back to the same thing. So it takes a while. You need support. Anyway, so images. 33% of Christian females use porn regularly. It's a third of your parishioners. And so this isn't Tony Beliz saying this, and it's not a male-dominated thing. It affects all of us. We're all sexual human beings, right? And again, some women have told me, I'm alone. I don't want to date. I don't want to catch something. But I'm sexual. Right? So some turn to pornography. Others have a relationship with a priest or a clergyman. Safe. You're committed. It's a safe thing. We're both adults. I know you can't have me. You know I can't have you. It's good. And that's where the double life creates problems. Because again, it's all good until it isn't. And I see a lot of people leading a double life, and I tell them, ultimately it will fail. Right? 20 years later, it fails. But the other worst thing is you're carrying that monkey on your back. See, that's a heavy burden. 33% viewed porn sites, clergy. 53% viewed it more than once. A few times. That was Christianity Today. And there's some current stuff on Christianity Today. The data stays about the same or a little higher. It's not going away. 40% of Christian pastors struggle with porn. It's not unique. Again, group this size, couple of you. No big deal. Just get help. This was from Christianity Today 2008. 64% of Christian leaders struggling with sex addiction and compulsion. 2/3 of Christian leaders. Right? It's just the way it is. And if I looked up pornography and mental health, whatever, the data's pretty high. It's not just a unique thing to clergy. This was, Breaking the Silence. This is a good book if you want to read something. A pastor's story of going public about his private battle with pornography. I had one person who was so addicted, he'd be doing his sermon, hoping to finish it so he could go back to his room and have a little brewski and some porn. He wasn't there. People felt him unavailable. Sometimes after services, you greet people and talk to them. He didn't have any time for that. So he came across as impatient, uncaring, the whole thing, because he was taking care of his own stuff. The National Catholic Report of 2013, male clergy, 37 describe internet porn as a struggle. Right? So intervention, what I would say to somebody, one, talk to somebody about it. The second is, get that computer out of your bedroom, put it in a public place. And the third is find alternatives. When you find yourself heading in that direction, just like me with the mahjong, find out why you're out of balance. Did a parishioner make you feel bad? Is someone in your family dying? Are you going through a vocation? Whatever it is, sit back and reflect. You have to open up your mind. Okay, now why am I feeling this way? What's going on? And connect those things. 57% compulsively view internet. It's a whole lot of people. And again, it doesn't say you're problematic or your profession is problematic. It's the strength of the addiction. Loneliness and isolation. Poor or no self. You take care of yourself, you don't find these traps. Find the balance. High expectations. Okay, I've got to solve these things. I'm the head of of my religious community. I should have answers to everything. When someone comes to me, I'm here to fix their stuff. Pray with them and help them. Well, you know, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. People are complex. Narcissism, self-centeredness, lack of education about internet porn. And then, is there a link to child predatory behavior? There seems to be. The person that's doing excessive porn on the internet tends to be isolated, tends to be insecure, inadequate, clearly are going to that rather than relationships. And so you end up with, power-based relationships. With the computer, when I get stuck with mahjong, I turn it off, right? Well, when you're not good with relationships, you're driven to little kids. You can control them, manipulate them, or to vulnerable people. Differences between pastors and adults. Pastors feel that 80% of images that are sexually arousing, they define it as pornography. Adults, 53%. Right? Different views of the same thing. Only 7% of churches have programs on pornography. See, that's terrible. That's terrible. And that's why this is important. Hopefully this can make you think of what you got to do to make your community a real community. It can't just be about prayer and sin, and grace and sin. I mean, that's important. I'm not minimizing that. But you got to do these other things. This is what people live in, right? And you got to have faith. That's what I tell people. You got to have faith. I don't care what. You got to believe in something. But that's it. You got to have all these other things, right? And so, but again, I'm just suggesting, don't run out and do something. Think it through. Think it through. Figure out how you're going to develop it. The first thing is to develop, situational awareness like we're doing today. Just open it up. Insight. Now you know. But it's not that simple, right? Now you got to figure out, okay, how am I going to implement this so that it becomes a positive thing rather than a scandal, right? How am I going to protect the people that want to come forward? Struggles with addiction. 64% of youth pastors, 57% of pastors. So again, with your youth ministry, they're adolescents first. They're going to struggle with this. Give them a place where they can talk. Again, 2016, this is a study of 432 pastors and 338 youth pastors. Same thing. 12% of the pastors, of the youth pastors were addicted, 5% of the pastors. In terms of the communities, the religious communities, 40% believe the pastor should be fired or resigned. 30% believe pastors should take a leave of absence until they stop. Right? So parishioners really look to you for leadership, and they're going to be disappointed. Like Jerry Falwell, here he is, Mr. Righteousness, can do no wrong. Major double life and a harmful double life, a criminal double life. Everybody realizes it's going to negatively impact the community. 87% of pastors feel shame. 55% live in constant fear that others will discover their addiction. Tremendous monkey to carry on your back. And I'll tell you, with people that I see that live a double life and they finally talk about it, the first thing they experience is relief. One, that I didn't fall off my chair. And two, that they finally told somebody. It's the beginning of help. So if someone talks to you about something real weird for you, don't cast judgment. The simple thing to say is, tell me more. Right? In another venue, I teach hostage negotiations, how to strategize, and there's 3 things you need to do. The art of negotiating with people and opening them up. They say something that you're not prepared to. They say something that really, holy, where'd this come from? Criminy, right? 1 tactic, reframe it, right? What I think you're trying to say is, all right, reflect it. And the 3rd thing is, just repeat what they just said. The addiction pathway. Okay, we got like 11 minutes. Sometimes it's an accidental introduction to pornography. Sometimes it's curiosity. Well, you know, Dr. Beliz, let me check it out. I'll check it out for myself. Again, under the guise of doing research, right? Right? A third party. Your son knows not to do it, but his buddy says, hey, did you see this? Let me show you this. Desire. You're curious. Your testosterone's up. Your libido's on fire. It's a compulsion. Can't stop. And necessity. Right? It's the way you relieve your sexual drive. It's a physiological addiction. It builds tolerance, just like Valium and alcohol. Gotta have a little more. Gotta have a little more. The hunt. See, the hunt, it's a predator. Sometimes they get excited on just the hunt. Okay, I saw this. Let me see what else is out there. Right? Let me see what's out there. A lot of time spent trying to make it better. Causes, visual stimulation, obviously. The need to relax through fantasy and pleasure. And again, what's wrong with that? Some people read a good book. Some people work out. Low self-esteem, isolation. You're all alone. Shame and guilt. Anger and frustration. And it's the vicarious expression of exploitation, victimization. You know, so a lot of causes. So here's the process. There's a desire for a high. I've had a bad day. I'm a good guy. I should reward myself. I'll play that game of mahjong. There's nothing wrong with it. I deserve it. After a day like today, I've been driving since yesterday. I live out in Chatsworth. My goodness. I deserve a thing. Then there's the disgust. God darn it, I did it again. Shame at what I did. Because I know this is wrong. And you beat yourself up for a while, right? Then there's that tension and desire begins to build. Keeps building, just like alcohol, just like domestic violence. Not that different, right? You beat your spouse to a bloody pulp, then you apologize, buy her some flowers, you know, cook a cake, and then it sort of gets better, and then you start getting upset again until you hit her again. So caretaking strategy. Are you healthy enough to do this stuff? Psychologically, are you talking? And then spiritually. Do you have spiritual direction? Do you have prayer? Do you have ministry? And so the point is, if you don't want therapy, a good spiritual director is good. Confidential, guides you, and hopefully they're trained. So you may want to ask them, do you know what you're doing? Because if all he's going to do is say, well, let's pray to God together, I'm not minimizing that, but that's not enough. It's not enough. Prayer is real important. Your spiritual life is really important. If you stop that, you're out of balance. But so's the other stuff. It's not one thing. Caretaking strategies, play. You just got to learn how to play. If you're not playing, if you don't have a release, find something. So it teaches you to socialize, and more importantly, you don't isolate. Right? Exercise. A sedentary life creates problems. DBNF. Right? Movement is important. You don't have to be running 10 miles a day. I'm not asking you to do that, but do something. You know, and some people say, no, you know, I get enough exercise walking at work. You're fooling yourself. It's not enough. You know, do 10,000 steps. That helps a lot. It helps a lot, all right? And it's brain-derived neurotropic factor. That's why that's wrong. I screwed it up. BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. All right? It's good for you. It's another lecture, but it's good for you. Leisure, you know, R&R, vacations, tours. What do you do to, you got to have something to look forward to. If it's just one more meeting, one more lecture, one more, you know, thing, what do you do for yourself? And if you're not doing anything, I'll tell you right now, you're out of balance. It's not about money. I see poor people. I tell them, you know, there are a lot of free stuff. Spend time with your kids. You yourself go and relax. Because I've seen real wealthy people, they're not connected to their kids or to themselves or to their church or whatever the heck, and they don't do well. It's not money driven. And then again, meaningful, productive activity. Person's at home all day long, you know, doesn't do well. You've got elderly people. They're home all day long. That's not good. That's not good. They got to be productive. So caretaking strategies, revisit your personal devils and demons. The other is, for you and for your parishioners and children, take the computer out of the bedroom. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Replace pornography viewing with what? You got to have a plan B. You can't just tell your kid, don't play computer games. You can't be on the computer 8 hours a day every Saturday and Sunday. Well, that's true, but it makes me think, well, what else is he going to do? Clearly, you're not around. Right? Avoid alcohol, pills, isolation, other triggers. Increase social contacts, activity. Get a best friend. All of you should have a best friend. You don't have a best friend, you're out of balance. Right? And hopefully it's not somebody that, you know, wants to watch pornography with you or go drink. Yeah, it feels good. Yeah, I know how you feel. I got a better site. You know, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, it's somebody that it's going to be non-judgmental too. You don't want the Bible thumper. You know, say, well, you know what it is. You're not praying enough. No, you don't want. You just want someone to talk to. You know, a lot of priests, for example, will tell me, you know, after all of this, I just want to hang out with somebody. I don't want to go to dinner where someone wants to know the latest quote from the Bible. He said, I'm tired of that. So talk to someone, request consultation if you're stuck, individual therapy, group therapy, medication, all these things help. Self-help groups, outpatient programs, residential programs. Someone asked for a bibliography, so I got this stuff here, but you know, there's tons of stuff. Don't just put sex because you end up on the other sites. Sexual addiction, you know, pornography in the clergy, things like that. You'll get some good sites. So, questions. You know, I didn't bring any cards, sorry about that, but if you want to reach me, send me an email, that's better anyways, and then I'll respond back. If I don't respond back, it's probably because I didn't get it, right? And, we went over 4 minutes, but listen, it's been a pleasure with you. I hope something here was helpful, and feel free to contact me if you'd like, and thank you very much.
Some of the sexual assault in the military?
Sure, because it does desensitize. The question is, does getting ahead of this prevent other problems? Absolutely, because it suggests all sorts of things. You know, there isn't a direct relationship between pornography and sexual assault, but the relationship is that there's power differentials, people are desensitized, they don't have an active life, their fantasies about sex are a little distorted, and so they don't have the benefits of a system that's supportive. And so absolutely, you know, pornography has a ripple effect, and that can certainly be one of them, you know. And also, if it's like the porn starts to get like, I'll mix it up with a little bit of drugs, a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of, you know, so it's like everything else. Alcohol can lead to it. You know, it's like an extra thing. Yes?
It's kind of a common question. I was thinking about the hierarchical structure that tends to exist in not only the Catholic Church, but the Protestant Church, where the pastor's on a pedestal, and there's kind of that, everyone else is below. Is there a potential to backdoor these addictive issues by addressing that structure, that distorted structure? You talked about it like we're all humans, but how do we address that at a systemic level?
Yeah, so, you know, you can look at it individually or organizationally. And there is tremendous pressure for you to be the head of your congregation, right? Just like in something like this. You know, I just talked, and not you, but some people expect an answer, right? And I feel okay saying, I don't know, right? So that's one. Also, the higher up you are in this pyramid, the greater risk that you're all alone. Because it's lonely up at the top, and people don't know you. So the idea is, yeah, how do you make it a little flatter? You know, how do you develop a religious community where it's not about you, it's about what your people want, right? So let's say you go back and try and pitch this, and it turns out people don't want to hear anything about this, okay, but we're all alcoholics, right? Well, you won't know that if you're sitting up at the top, just talking to your administrators. So I do think that you need to have a plan B, right? And look at it organizationally at a macro level as well as interpersonally.
Thank you, Dr. Beliz. I work with college students primarily, and I've also done a lot of work in churches as a spiritual director. And many of the students and young people I've worked with and done ministry with struggle because they were in a time in history and in a generation where people are becoming much more open sexually and much more progressive and liberal-minded in a lot of ways socially. But our Western culture, and especially the Christian church culture, is still very, very conservative when it comes to sex, especially. And so I'm hearing a lot from young people who are saying, you know, it's still not okay to talk about sex. And so how do we, not just within the church, but in other places where we might have positions of leadership, how can we start to encourage people to develop sexually in ways that are healthy?
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's a good point, which is that you have to build a program that's not necessarily about what you think or your religion thinks, but something that's relevant to the kids. Because if, let's say, I'm struggling with addiction, and I go to your church, and you say, this is a sin, I'm not going to go. You just lost me. So is that good ministry? See, the ministry is, can you help the people that aren't there, right? And can you, again, be flexible? Because if you're not flexible, you're not going to be doing good work, right? And that's a challenge for every religious community. You know, when the Catholic Church took a stand against gay marriage, right? It helped a whole bunch of people who thought that was a sin, evil, the whole thing. They lost all sorts of well-meaning Catholics, good people that were suddenly, here's their faith, now I'm not a part of it, right? And so again, as leaders, you make that decision, I think. That if you're going to say that your church is all about righteousness, like Jerry Falwell, it's your deal. You know, but you're going to lose people. Just like if you say, you know what, let's have conversations about sex. Well, the conservatives are going to say, man, you're the devil. So you got to think about that. You got to think about that. But how do you develop programs? Right? And maybe it isn't necessarily about sex. It's about good social outlets. See, so just like the pedophile that will never admit he's a pedophile, you deal with their social isolation. You deal with their low self-esteem. You deal with the way they anger management. They handle their anger. That helps them. But you ask them, you know, did you abuse this kid? No. Or the devil made me do it. So it's a challenge because you guys aren't in a very good spot, right? And you can lose or gain by opening these things up. But I'll tell you, all the data shows, this isn't me, but all the data shows that sex is a big thing in our lives. And because it's now so accessible through the internet, you can't help but deal with it.
So I'll ask it then. I talked earlier about my involvement with the foster care. What is any connections between people who are leaving the foster care system, emancipating foster youth, and maybe getting into the pornography business or the adult entertainment business of people coming out of foster care?
Well, you know, I think that a lot of it now I see more enforcement, trying to enforce it, not a lot on the prevention side, because I think you're right that, you know, you look at vulnerable populations, and while we all might have our own idea of what's a vulnerable population, I think everybody would agree that the foster kid who's had parenting issues, trauma, sexual abuse, and now they're growing up to go into the world that's so complicated. See, our world's real complicated now. I don't think I would have made it in this environment. I just don't think so. So I don't think enough people are talking prevention, you know, and that's certainly a place where we need to sort of develop the psychological mindedness and the situational awareness that you know, long before we get into the human trafficking and heroin abuse and everything else, prostitution, maybe we can just prevent some of this stuff. And what's a ready population? The foster system. You know, it's like mental health in other places. It's broken. It's broken. It's not enough people. So those become areas that I think are ripe for programs. And, you know, a lot of the kids coming out of there, they haven't had the kind of education and mentorship that they need to make it happen. Yeah, you had a kid that, how's he going to apply to college? He doesn't know. He doesn't know how to do that. You know, I have families where the judge will say, well, why didn't he call you? Why didn't he keep his appointment? I tell them, well, you know, they don't operate that way. They don't have an appointment book. They don't have this. That's not what they do. We got to help them a little, right? So,
All right, well, let's give Dr. Beliz a warm thank you.
okay.